Podcast, your home for all things Astros. With your hosts, sports writer Jeff Balke and Astros broadcaster and former third baseman Geoff Blum. Now, here's Balke and Blummer.
What is up, Astros fans? Welcome to episode 86 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network. I'm Jeff Balke alongside my partner, Geoff Blum. Like the rest of us, just trying to avoid the heat. Blummer, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. A little tired, but I'm good.
I feel you. Exciting game last night. Obviously, Astros coming back against the Red Sox and kind of wiping them out. And we got some more incredible...
Hey, Ma! Get the Meatloaf!
And Chaz with a couple of bombs. The Meatloaf is strong, by the way. That's a call that should live in infamy, quite honestly.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I've had to let people know where it came from, though. There's still some people out there curious.
I did see that. And I mean, look, for me and obviously for you, it's surprising that anyone would not know about Wedding Crashers and not know about Chaz, the legend of crashing weddings, who in the end decided to start crashing funerals. Look, I went to that at the theater the weekend it opened. I went by myself, and there was a guy sitting next to me with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend did not laugh at anything. She was like, found it, none of it funny at all. So the whole time, he and I are like elbowing each other and like dying laughing. And I kid you not, when Will Ferrell walked out, at that moment, the entire audience stood up and clapped. It was like a standing ovation in the theater. I'd never seen that before. That he comes down, he's like, "You don't even know, almost nunchucked you." I was like, it's just amazing. So yeah, so if you haven't watched Wedding Crashers, strongly urge you, go back and watch, because then you'll know where the Meatloaf comes from.
Yep.
And why Chaz would want it. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and of course on YouTube. Give us a follow on X now, we'll call it by its real name, and Instagram at Believe in Astros. Find me at Jeff Balke, Blummer at Blummer27, pretty much everywhere out there. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and be alerted to new videos. Thanks for everyone who's given us 5 stars on Apple. Obviously, send us your comments and questions. Like, is the starting pitching broken? We'll talk about that some today, because it's been a little scary lately. Got some stats to go with that. First of all, we should just go right off the bat, mention Jose Altuve's 2000th hit. It was just such an amazing moment. If you've been an Astros fan for as long as I have, if you've watched the team and played, obviously, as long as you have, that's just an incredible accomplishment for anyone. Only the third Astro to ever do that. And, just a really – and how ironic was it that it was very similar to Biggio's 2000th, where he actually tried to leg out a double and didn't quite get there. It was pretty poetic. What was it like being at the game, Blummer?
Well, the game itself was awful, but the one shining bright spot was Jose Altuve and the anticipation of getting that hit. I'm actually glad that he did it at home, because he was on a stretch going into Miami where he was getting 2-3 hits a game, and you just assumed that he was going to be able to accomplish it in Miami. But a little bit of an injury and then a cold spurt allowed him to do it at home. So I was pretty happy about that. But it was pretty amazing to watch him go out there and hit a ball into the corner, which usually is a double. And I think he anticipated, or maybe took for granted, that it would be a double.
Right.
And Marlowe out there made a good play on it, threw it back in, and you could kind of see the disappointment as Altuve slid into second base, realizing that he got thrown out at second. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the accomplishment. He's one of the fastest players to 2,000 hits, 200 home runs, and 200 stolen bases. Wow. He beat out Willie Mays as far as games played to get to that number. So it kind of puts things in perspective on how good this dude is. And, it took him 7 years to get 1,000 hits. Will it take him 7 more? And will he be around long enough to do that? That's the question, because we all knew he was going to get 2,000. Now it's just how many more is he going to get?
Yeah, and the guy's so consistent as a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
He's the type of guy who I think we've discussed this before. He's the type of guy who's going to probably keep hitting. it's not like he's not the type of guy who needs power to hit. No. And he doesn't really even need the speed that he has. I mean, he's not like Ichiro legging out a million infield hits. Although I will say, kids, if you don't know who Willie Mays is, shame on you, A, and B, please look it up on Wikipedia, just so you
If
can
you don't
understand.
know who Willie Mays and Chaz Reinhold are, you've got some issues.
Yeah, especially Chas Reinhold. If you don't know who Chas Reinhold is, I mean, that's pretty good. Okay, so before we dig into starting pitching, I just want to update, if you hadn't seen, I'm sure everyone's seen, that Michael Brantley is back playing at AAA. Blummer, I wanted to ask you about this because we make the assumption here that Brantley could be back up in the majors here in another week or so. That gets him here right about the beginning of September. We had talked about this before. What kind of time does a player need to really ramp up? Because he's only going to have a month before we hit the postseason. Is that enough? And what do we need? What do the Astros need to see from him to make sure that he can be in the lineup?
Well, as it stands, on that second rehab stint he's on, I believe he's 4 for his last 11. So he's gotten 11 at bats, and he's kind of doing the every other day thing. And I think that they're planning on trying to get him to play back-to-back days just to see how the body responds, see if that shoulder responds. And that's all that really is a test to see if he can go back-to-back games. Now, when he gets to the show, because I do believe, like you said, he's going to be up here maybe in the next week or two. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be that everyday guy. I think that he is going to be that every other day guy because there's such a battle for who's going to get the DH spots. But now that you've found Yainer a spot at first base, potentially down the stretch, that gets him some at bats. But, Jose Abreu is going to be healthy and coming back. What do you do then? So there's going to be a bit of a logjam in this lineup trying to get the appropriate guys out there. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on Dusty to get the right matchups and get the right mix in the lineups. But that being said, I think when Michael comes back, it could be an every other day thing. I anticipate he won't go right back into that 2-hole for me. He'd go right back into that 6 or 7 hole and just start driving in runs, which would be a lot of fun. But to your point, down the stretch, if he could get at least 50 to 60 at bats, which, what is that, 15 games, 20 games almost? About like that. If he could get 15 to 20 games in, I think that would really benefit him and make him a valuable piece in the playoffs when the Astros get there.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously I didn't play the game like you did, so it's hard to tell. But it does seem to me, especially he's a little bit older, guy needs a little time to adjust just to what's going to happen. It's funny that you mentioned Yainer. He had some good picks at first. He's clearly a good athlete. Obviously, I like the discussion of his glove last night during the game of how he's switched over to the black glove now. I always loved first baseman's gloves for some reason. I just thought they were kind of cool looking. But he's been good at first. He's not spectacular, but I don't think anybody's expecting. He's been good enough, and that's it. And that's enough to get him in, especially with Abreu still out.
Yeah, you've got to remember, and I said this on the broadcast yesterday, this is a primary catcher. This guy has been born and bred catching, throwing on the gear. He's not a first baseman, and learning first base at the big league level is very tough, having done it. Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility over there that you don't anticipate, where to go on cutoffs. You're sprinting to first base on every single ground ball. Pickoff plays aren't as easy as they look, and he's doing it in a pennant race. So I give him a lot of credit for just having the cojones to go out there and just throw himself into harm's way and trying to get that bat in there. But he's done it to himself because the stick is so good. I mean, he's unbelievable. He and Chaz are going to end up with 20 plus home runs. And that was remarkable. If you'd have said that to me in March, April, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have said, man, I don't know how they're going to get in there and get those at bats, but they've done it and they produced. And to Yainer's credit, he's forced his way into that lineup.
Yeah, think about that for a second. Think about the fact that Yainer Diaz and Chas McCormick are probably going to have 20 home runs each, right?
50 plus RBIs each. Chas is going to be up over 60 easy.
No one would have predicted that at the beginning of the year. Nobody, not a single person. There's not. If you had, then you should bet on the lottery immediately. Take every penny you have and sink it into a guess because you'll probably win. I mean, let's talk about Chaz a minute. Like another 2 home runs last night. The guy is he is as good against lefties as Yainer is bad against lefties, probably. But the thing about Chaz is he looks now so confident at the plate. He gets up there. He's a guy that I think had been a little bit of a free swinger, but he looks like he's more careful in selecting his pitches now. He just looks like he's matured as a baseball player over the course of this year. And obviously a guy that we didn't know was going to be the starting center fielder at the beginning of the year. No one was really sure. Everybody was thinking about, where are we going to find our center fielder from? Well, I think you found him.
Yeah, I think you did too. And I know that Dusty's done a good job of mixing, Jake in there too.
Yeah.
I kind of like the outfield arrangement last night for Christian Javier was great as far as athleticism and range and ability to cover ground with Chaz in left, Myers in center, and then Tucker back in that lineup. So if you can have a defensive alignment like that that's going to track the ball down, that's highly appealing. But at the same time, Chaz, again, much like Yainer, has swung himself into that center field job. He has produced. He has caught the ball. He has done everything right. And he's actually done a pretty good job of holding runners to, not letting them gain 90 feet, because that's really been an issue for Jake Myers, is controlling the running game out there in center field. But, Chaz has been fantastic. And you're right about the maturity. Hearing some of the conversations and interviews he's doing, he's making the appropriate adjustments. And that's what I like to hear, because he's already got the athleticism and the ability, but when that mind is start working in the right way, unlike mine can right now, he's going to be better. But he's making those in-game adjustments. He did against Paxton and ended up shooting him into the Crawford boxes. That was beautiful.
Yeah, and he's pulling the ball more. That's something, Chaz is the opposite field home run guy, kind of always has been. But now he's been pulling the ball almost as much this year as he's been hitting the ball to right. And that just, to me, I don't know, it seems to me like he's just seeing the ball better. And that just, it just makes for everything easier for him. Since you mentioned center field, somebody asked me this question the other day, and I wanted to bring it up to you. And because I thought it was interesting. Why is it that Justin Verlander wants Mauricio Dubon in center field? What is there? I know some people are just quirky, pitching and stuff like that. But what is it that what do people put into that decision where they're like, listen, I need my guy in center field and my guy is Mauricio Dubon?
I don't know. It's Justin Verlander saying, I want this guy. And you go, yes, sir. And you put him out there. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe, it would probably be beneficial. You could have the same outfield alignment that you had for Christian Javier, just put Dubon in center field instead of Jake Myers and maintain some of that, maintain at least some of that offensive integrity by keeping Chaz in that lineup. Might be an option, and keep Jordan in that DH role and have Yainer at first base because he's such a fly ball pitcher. That could be the arrangement. But at the same time, I'm not sure. I know for pitchers, being able to look in, seeing a target that looks good to them, working well with the signs and the pitches they're given, obviously that makes sense with the catcher.
Yeah.
But this is the first I've heard of actually having a center fielder behind you that makes you feel comfortable. So he loves Mauricio Dubon, and if it takes Mauricio Dubon being in center field to have Justin be comfortable and pitch well, let's go out and do it, because Mauricio's going to play you a decent center field.
Yeah.
I don't think he's as good as Chas McCormick or maybe a Jake Myers out there, but at the same time, he's still a decent stick.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder too if maybe Verlander feels better about him because he thinks he sees something, like if he sees a tipping pitch or something like that. It could
be the arm too, now that I think about it. Mauricio's got a very good arm surprisingly for an infielder playing in the outfield. Yeah,
he really does. So maybe that's part of it too. So the Astros I want to dig into this series against Seattle. What a disaster of a weekend. I think
Maldi was polite in saying it was a slap in the face, because I would have called it a straight, gut punch or a punch to the jaw.
I can think of some more vulgar terms as well, but and I probably have used them over the course of this weekend. I can tell you that it's so incredibly disappointing when really the Astros had an opportunity to kind of bury Seattle. They had an opportunity to really extend their lead over them, get some safe distance between them and the wild card spot. So they didn't even have to think about that. They could just focus on the Rangers, who, by the way, lost again last night. Now all these teams are within 2 games of one another. And while that'll probably make for an exciting down the stretch run, It's weird to me that you have a team that goes out there and just lays an egg against Seattle. I mean, granted, props to Seattle for being good. But, and then they have this team. Blummer, do team meetings work? I mean, like everybody talks about these team meetings. I'm sure you've been in team meetings before. I can tell you this. Every time somebody let's have a team meeting, I'm always like, oh, Jesus, really? Do we have to? So, I mean, what do we take away from this weekend, from the sweep and the quote unquote team meeting and the slap in the face? What can we take away from all that?
Well, I mean, for one game, it's worked, so
fair.
you've got to appreciate that. But at the same time, this hasn't been a team in the past where you've had to have the team meeting. And I think that's what's interesting about it. But Maldi felt the urge. He's, obviously a leader inside that clubhouse and felt the need to go out there and do that. It was a combination of things over the weekend against Seattle, where Seattle is playing the baseball that I think Seattle expected to be playing all season long.
Yeah.
Is the offense showed up. Julio Rodriguez was on an absolute tear. And then you had the pitching back it up. So that's who the Seattle Mariners anticipated being: good pitching, great hitting, and winning ball games. And then at the same time, timing is everything. So you catch Seattle on a heater, and then you catch the Astros just being completely flat. I think the ultimate dog days showed up for 3 days, because what I saw was a lethargic team.
Yeah.
And what got me was some of the mental mistakes that were being made. And it just shocked me. And I think that's probably what shocked Martin Maldonado too, and kind of felt like he needed to snap these guys back, because these guys are way too good to be losing that badly to the Seattle Mariners, even though they've owned them this season. But at the same time, there's still there's not plenty of season left, but there's still season left to go out there and do it. But the way these Mariners are playing, you've got to take care of your own business right now.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And somebody posted this on Twitter. I'm sorry for whoever it was that I'm going to fail to remember their name.
On X, man. Dude, it's like when they changed the disabled list to the injured list.
Oh yeah,
I kept saying DL. I finally have become accustomed to the IL, but it's like Twitter. Come on, X.
It's like the X? Guardians, or the Commanders in football. Like, come on.
I butcher the Indian Guardian thing all the time.
I still accidentally call the Wizards the Bullets sometimes. That's stupid.
That makes sense.
I mean, come on.
I just like asking people if they're on X.
That is
being a 90s kid.
That is exactly being a very 90s. It's like, hey man, are you on X?
I usually ask it around 3 or 4 in the morning, though.
That's exactly right. And if the person's really thirsty, then you know what the answer is. So digging into, not that I know anything about any of this.
I've heard.
Yeah, digging exact. What was that line from Spinal Tap? Where he says, "The bigger the cushion, the deeper the pushing," or so I have read.
Yep.
Big I want to talk a little bit about this starting pitching. There was some stats that in the Chronicle the other day. I actually pulled them and used them in my story in the Houston Press that came out this morning. So Framber Valdez has a 6.18 ERA in 7 outings since the All-Star break. Seattle got him for 6 runs.
That's with a no-hitter in it.
It's including the no-hitter, correct. In 3 starts since his no-hitter, he's allowed 16 runs in 19 2/3 innings. Javier, who started yesterday and was okay, but struggled mightily to get through it. He has a 7.56 ERA leading up till then in his last 7 starts. Justin Verlander's at 4.5 in his 3 starts since joining the Astros. The Astros starters have compiled a 3.58 ERA, the 3rd lowest in the majors, through June. They entered Sunday with a 4.67 ERA since July 1st, the 10th highest in baseball. And that preceded Hunter Brown allowing 6 runs over 2 2/3 innings. I mean, we've said this. Who thought that their best pitcher at this point in the season would be freaking Ty France? I mean,
Wrong Frenchman.
Edit, JP France. So listen, this team, look, if everybody, we always just relied on the starting pitching. It was just a given that they were going to be good. We sometimes wonder about the bullpen. They get taxed although they've been still very good. Hector Neris has been great. Graveman's been great. They've had some great
Brian
pitching.
Abreu? Jeez.
Yeah, Abreu's been great. Like, they've had great pitching from the bullpen. But when you can't pitch starting and you can't really hit, you look at the Astros, they're like 4th in total runs, but a bunch of those are like 11, 12, 13 run games, followed by like 1, 0, 2. Are we concerned about the starting pitching getting into the postseason at this point?
I think you should be.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just frustrating. I feel for the offense, because if you're on the offensive side, and especially you really want to see some frightening numbers, go look at the offense at home in comparison to what opposing teams are doing. It's a vast difference between what the Astros are doing at home and what they're doing on the road. They would almost be better playing, every postseason game on the road the way they've been going. I know that shifts a little bit in the postseason because the crowd kind of comes into play a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's been amazing. But I feel for the offense, not knowing, but the anticipation of, man, I hope these guys can shut it down in the first couple of innings and give us some breathing room and let us go work, instead of going, oh my gosh, when you come in off defense at a home game and you just look around, you're like, how many runs do we need to get, instead of saying, hey, let's settle in and see what we can do. That's a tough gig right there, is knowing that you have you're giving the other team a 4-run handicap some of these games, and you've got to fight the entire game. That makes games really tough for the offense.
And that's been a big time thing too, is where, you start in a hole. These guys give up, 4 or 5 runs early on, and then you're just trying to claw your way back. And so then, of course, you're going to press a little bit, I'm guessing. You're going to try to get hits when you probably don't need to try to get hits.
Well, if the other opposing pitcher is on, and you figure that out, you're like, damn, this guy's drilling us and making us pitches. You're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And all of a sudden, you do kind of get in that mode of just like, man, I don't know what we're going to do.
It feels like this season has just been kind of like it's just not a roller coaster. It just feels off balance. It feels like nothing has ever quite been in balance. Starters have been good. Bullpen's been bad. Hitting hasn't been good. It's like there's just been this up and down. And the bullpen's getting taxed. Lots of people throwing lots of innings. It just feels like an awkward season. Somebody said the other day, again, they said, the Astros are operating, and maybe this is part of the team meeting. It seems like they're operating a bit like this is last year. But last year they were 10 games up in the division. Yeah,
they're kind of coasting like they've got a huge lead, but they don't.
Yeah.
And they play with a little more urgency, maybe.
Well, what has it been? When's the last time they were in an actual race? It was like 2015, maybe. Well, I guess
I would say 15, 16, maybe.
Yeah, maybe the COVID season, but that doesn't really, I try to kind of weed that one out in general. But yeah, maybe 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, where that's the last time they've really had a challenge. And maybe they're so used to it that they're just kind of like, we're going to roll on in. But you can't do that. Not in pro sports, man. What is your your favorite line is like,
this game will try and kill you.
That's right. And you can't get out there and mess around. And granted, this is a team full of veterans and mature guys, but it definitely feels like there's been some coasting going on. Hate to say it.
But at the same, they've coasted and they're a game and a half back now. It's just crazy to think about. And it's a different in the sense of, because every time we got to September in the last 6 years, it was, what's the magic number? And it was usually in the teens. And we would just sit there waiting and anticipating when that celebration was going to be. But this year's a little bit different. And maybe that's what they need to recognize, is that they do have an opportunity to win the West again, because Texas is faltering right now. But at the same time, they have to go out and earn it, as opposed to when they earned it in April, May, June, July of the previous years. This year is a little bit different. And obviously they have another month to lock it down. And I think I saw a number records over the last couple of years, and the worst record they had since 2017 from August 21st on was 23-17. If they're able to do that, they'll end up with 93 wins, which should be enough to put them into the postseason. But again, it's not what we're accustomed to when we're seeing the high 90s to 100 win seasons.
Right. And especially given the fact that they've done it seemingly so easily. I mean, this is the first year where we've seen the Astros, like, again, not counting the COVID year, but this is the first year in a while we've seen the Astros. They struggled. There's you can see that struggle. It's nothing has come easily for them this year. And look, the injuries have certainly played a role in that, but they're pretty much healthy now. Save the guys who are out for the season. So they can't. There's no excuses at this point for anything like that. They're just going to have to go through and figure it out. And it's not going to get any easier. I will say the AL helps them because unlike the NL, where, my goodness, you got some good teams in the NL. Good grief.
Dude, yeah.
In the AL, nobody's running away with the AL, right?
Have you looked at Fangraphs and some of the playoff percentages and things like that? It's still the Astros. They're still the top of the American League as far as playoff percentages, World Series chances. Yeah. It's amazing. That kind of speaks to your point. We're talking about a team that we're concerned about, yet everybody outside of Houston is just saying they're the better team.
Well, we've set such a high. I mean, they have such a high standard.
We are spoiled.
We are super spoiled. It's so funny to be like, oh, it's like, what was the line years ago from Friends where he was like, he goes, my wallet's too small for all my 50s and my diamond shoes are too tight. It's like, that's basically, we have spent so much time with this incredible team. That you get to the point where you're like, well, obviously they should be winning every single game, and I mean it puts a lot of pressure on. I will say there have been some things this year that have felt un-Astro like. The sort of lack of consistency in the lineup where guys keep getting moved around a little bit. I think that's been kind of awkward. There hasn't been that sort of energy from the team, I think, on a consistent basis like there may have been in previous seasons. So there's been a few things, but overall, this team is still really, really good. They can beat anybody anytime. So I don't think we should just set that aside. I just think that it's, we're sitting around. There is some nitpicking going on for sure.
Oh, yeah, big time. But I do think that, Fromber and Christian Javier are the two question marks for me. I need them to figure it out. And for Justin Verlander, I think one thing we need to remember is that he's such a workhorse, and his workload in the past, he's a September type pitcher. I know he's had his issues in the World Series, but between September and Game 1 of the World Series, this dude has finished seasons strong, and he had that first month and a half of the season off. So he's kind of his scheduling is kind of off a little bit. It's kind of been pushed back. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens when that calendar does turn to September. The intensity ramps up a little bit, and he becomes stronger. That's what makes Justin Verlander unique for me, is that he gets stronger with the more pitches that he throws, and that's kind of what I'm anticipating for Justin, is maybe that strong September when he starts to get his legs under him.
Yeah, if the playoffs started today and the Astros were playing in the first round, I mean, who are your 4 starting pitchers?
Well, luckily the way things are going, you'd have a couple of compressed series with the wild card and the division series, so you wouldn't have to have that 4th starter.
Yeah, you just need 3. But who's the 3?
Well, that's the JP France might be my 2. That's where I think things get interesting. You go Verlander, JP France, and then you kind of patch it together in that 3rd game. But remember the Kansas City Royals during their run in the 13, 14, 15 when I think they won they win the World Series in 15, but their mentality was, we're going to shorten the game with our bullpen. And to be honest, I feel like that's kind of what you might be toying with the idea of doing that for the Astros, as good as their bullpen's been, and with some of the days off that you get and the scheduling in the postseason. You may just shorten the game and say, hey, Hunter, give me 5 innings. Javi, give me 5 innings. Keep us in the game. And if your offense takes any kind of a lead, boom, in that 6th inning, you start plowing through that bullpen.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad idea, especially given the fact that they will put some starters into the bullpen. When this season comes to an end, there are going to be guys who are starters who are going to be in the pen. There are going to be they have guys in the bullpen, and they have some guys down. Like Seth Martinez just came up. He couldn't.
Maton's on the injured list,
right? He couldn't. I mean, Martinez couldn't find the strike zone last night, but
who could? Jeez,
I know, right? Exactly. But I think you've got guys that are going to be coming back either from injury or coming up. I mean, we haven't seen Ronel Blanco in a while, but there's no reason why you wouldn't think about having a guy like that later in the season, especially September call-ups, a guy you can help give some relief to the bullpen. And if he catches fire, you might see him. So and there's a lot of guys out there who, they're going to be able to rely on. Their pitching depth is ridiculous. So it does. That's a really good point, Blummer. I wouldn't put it past him to do that. I don't know if the Astros as an organization are that way, but it sure would behoove them to think about it.
Well, Hunter Brown. What if you had Hunter Brown for 2 innings? He did it. Where is it? Miami.
Yeah, that's right.
And he has the experience in the bullpen in the postseason. But if you can come in and instead of having him trying to massage his way through 5 or 6 innings, what if you just had him go out there and just blow it out in 2 innings? He's pumping 97 with a 93-mile-an-hour slider. Maybe maybe you find a pocket that way, and he faces a lineup 1 time instead of 2 times.
Yeah, and that, I think, there's the key right there. How many times do they get through a single lineup? If you can allow guys to just get through the lineup once, in a relief stint, then maybe that's what you do. Maybe that's what you get. That's a good option, Blummer, and I hope they consider that. Couple things before we go. First, I want to mention I saw this on TikTok. I saw both of these on TikTok, which there's a lot of baseball TikTok out there that's pretty interesting. And the first one was Oakland. So obviously we've talked about what a mess this is and how they're going to, but I didn't realize just how bad they had been this year. They have the lowest batting average, the lowest slugging percentage, the fewest hits, the fewest runs. They give up the most runs. They have the worst defense. And this is the crazy one. They are on pace to finish the year with a run differential that is negative 391. I mean, that is 41 runs worse than the worst ever run differential. I mean, you have got to, and of course the owners are probably thrilled that this is happening because they don't care. They just want to, but give it to the fans. They have done everything. I don't know if you saw this, but they had a second reverse protest night. And the A's jacked up the prices of tickets. They
are just punking each other, man.
That is just
terrible.
So they went anyway. 37,000 fans at that game, all wearing Sell T-shirts, yet chanting "Sell the team." The kids who run the bases chant "Sell the team," which is amazing. They have a big thing in the parking lot that has pictures of the owner on it that people can come out and throw rotten tomatoes at before the game. Of course, they hold up the most creative damn signs, during the game. This is look, I don't want the A's to leave. They probably will. But, man, I got to tell you, I'm really enjoying the chaos. It is fun to watch fans fight back.
No, it is, and that's a very passionate fan base. And this generation of fan should go back and do some history work on the Oakland organization. It's a historic franchise.
Yes,
during the 70s, they were the team to beat in the American League, and through the 90s, they had the Bash. I mean, there is a lot. Ricky Henderson. There's been
back in the day. I mean, there's been some amazing.
Yeah, there's been some fantastic ball players that have gone through Oakland, and then you go and dig into the city and the amount of ball players that the city has produced in some of their little league and high school and college teams. I mean, it is amazing what the history of baseball in that area has produced. And I obviously have an affinity for that area, having gone to school up there and watched a lot of games as a fan in Oakland before that damn Davis, Mount Davis out there that Al Davis built and completely ruined any sightline out there. But it's a passionate fan base. I feel for them, and moving out of there is going to be it's going to be tough because that is one of those old school fan bases that really had a passion for the game, and they're going to be missing out because their owner's being a prick.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that Oakland's going to lose both the Raiders and the A's. I mean, you're talking about fan bases that are, it's like the Cleveland Browns fan base, or any of those. I mean, it's like, or
Oilers
or the Oilers, or it's like Honestly, it's
I hate these franchises moving. I don't know if I'm old school or sentimental, traditionalist, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, the Colts, the Browns, the Oilers, the A's, even the Expos. I mean, it pains me. I don't like seeing it.
Yeah, and the Sonics are one that just kills me because it was such a brutal
I agree on that
move
one big time.
where they pretended that everything was fine, and then Howard Schultz sold the team to Oklahoma. There's so many things. There was a great documentary out about
another
that.
legendary franchise too, by the way.
Yeah, and they're going to get another team. I don't think there's
they
any
have
question.
to. That Seattle is such a good city for sports and everything else. Oh man,
basketball is going to expand, and they're going to go there. But it just, whenever these things happen, and look, as someone who was involved in attempting to keep the Rockets here when there was thought that they would leave, I can tell you that one of the struggles that fans have is that they're fans, so they're not. Nobody should be asking them to go out and do anything, right? Other than show up to the games and cheer, buy a ticket, buy a jersey, whatever, right? Nobody should be asking anything of them. And yet when these things come up, stadium issues or whatever else, the fans are always like, hey, you've got to do something. Well, you know what? How about
they're always the pawn?
Yeah, how about the owners do something? Like, y'all are the billionaires. Y'all are the ones with the money and the power. Why don't you influence the change? Why don't you be proactive about it? Fortunately, it feels like here we have pretty good owners in general in Houston, and so we don't have to kind of worry about that too much. But it's frustrating to see, like, everybody's like, well, look, the fans have to do it. They don't have a choice, because what else are they going to do? Just fold up their tents and let it go? So that's a very frustrating thing. Last thing, and I totally want to hear what you think about this, because I don't know if you knew this. Yesterday was the anniversary of one of the dumbest games in Major League Baseball history. It was go back. It was picture this. It was 1990, and the Dodgers were playing under Tommy Lasorda. They were leading 11-3 in the ninth inning against the Phillies.
Oh, dear God.
And the Phillies scored 9 runs to win the game. And what made it it was just unbelievable. Like, it was a just incredible thing. But also Chris Berman, who eventually became the ESPN nickname guy, he was on the call, and he used virtually every line from the song Hotel California as a metaphor for that game. In addition, so it was already a fun sort of experiment. But then in the ninth, they scored 9 runs to beat the Dodgers. Lasorda was furious. He was losing his mind. They went through, I think, 4 pitchers in the ninth inning, and nobody could get anybody out. They finally got the final out, and then the Dodgers couldn't do anything in the bottom line. Have you ever been part of a game that had any kind of close to that kind of crazy turnaround? Because I just can't imagine what it's like on the field.
I'm sure I have, but I can't recall any at the time. Yeah. But, I do recall, I think it was Astros versus Yankees, and I'm not sure if it was 21, but the Yankees were in town and they were down by 6.
Yes.
And you can almost feel that momentum building, in your dugout, because you're kind of in this mode of, we're getting our ass kicked. What are we going to do? Let's go out and just have some good at bats, get greedy, get selfish, and say, hey, this is my at bat. We'll see what happens. I'll try and get a number if I can. And then all of a sudden you get a couple of guys on, and then boom, you drive in 2 and you're going, that was kind of cool. We're close. We're a little bit closer now. We're through striking distance. But I think if when you're down by that much and you can get the tying run to the plate, say the base is loaded and you're down by 4, you kind of look around, you're going, dude, one swing of the bat, we tie this thing up, boys. And you kind of start to feel that momentum build. Now, I've been on the other side because I played in a game with the San Diego Padres at Chavez Ravine against the Dodgers, where they hit 3 or 4 straight home runs, and you just kind of feel this impending doom, almost this dark fog just kind of starts rolling over the field, and you feel like your hands are tied and you can't do anything about it, and you start to suffocate, and then all of a sudden the game's over and you've lost it. So it's terrible on the losing side, but on the winning side, you win it and you kind of go back to the dugout or the locker room, and you're just kind of like, dude, that just happened. That was unfreaking believable.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I know fans feel it. You can feel it.
It's the same thing for the player.
That's fascinating to hear that. It's palpable though. When momentum swings happen, there is a vibe, which is funny, because it's funny that when that affects a group all at the same time, when you can feel that like momentum shift, and you can feel that if you're in the crowd too, you really feel it. You can feel that sort of either good or bad. Like the Pujols home run that just it felt like
sucked the life out of the place.
It felt like every person in the building just passed over. They just passed over. That was it. And they just all died, fell over, and that was it. It was just the end of it. It was just there's like 40,000 funerals at the end of that. It's just what it felt like. I remember seeing I remember Tracy McGrady during the playoffs dunked over Sean Bradley. And when he did it, the crowd, they were in Dallas playing the Mavericks, and the crowd went ooh, like there was just this like audible sort of like, ugh, like somebody just hit everyone simultaneously. So it's fascinating to me that can happen. That's interesting. You say the players feel it too, and that it does it change how you play at all? Do you think? I mean, I guess it depends on the player, right?
Well, I mean, all of it. You turn joy into pain, and then urgency, and then panic. But on the winning side, all of a sudden that energy just overwhelms you, and you catch that second win, and you start to just blow through it, and you're just like, man, we're going to win this game. We're going to find a way, but you don't find that way until you start getting base runners and realizing that you can see the panic in the losing team. Yeah.
Can you really? That's fascinating. That to me is a really interesting part of sports. Sports is obviously a skill, game. It's something where you have to be really, really good. But the fact that emotion can impact it to that level, and that you guys feel it the way we do, that's pretty awesome. I love hearing that. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Blummer, you got any final thoughts? We got a couple games against the Red Sox. Then I guess you get a day off, and then we're on to the Tigers. Good Lord, the AL Central. Woo, my Lord. Says a dumpster fire happening in the AL Central. What are your thoughts on this coming week? What the Astros need to do? I mean, it's a tight race.
Well, against the Red Sox, I feel like all you got to do is put the ball in play and let them throw it around a little bit. Their defense is absolutely horrific for whatever reason. And I know that Alex Cora is he's done a great job up to this point in the season of managing this team and trying to get them to win ball games. They're in contention for a wild card. But man, if I'm pitching on this team like James Paxton did last night, and I'm watching this defense, I'm going, dear Lord, we need some help. But at the same time, hopefully this meeting went well for the Astros and they can continue. Just remember that as good as Chaz, Yainer, Altuve, Tucker have been, Alvarez hasn't been that guy yet. Right. And if he gets hot, watch out. And if you get Brantley back, watch out.
Did Chaz deserve that hit? I mean,
no.
Rafael Devers, he hit the ground like he had been hit with a 150-mile-an-hour shot. It was a 90-mile-an-hour, and he just fell to his knees.
If you hit a ball and the guy catches it, how is that a hit? I don't freaking understand.
I don't know. I heard you having a panic attack about it.
I've got a conspiracy theory out there, but I don't want Rob Manfred calling me next.
Oh God, he should just call us both right now. Just get us in the principal's office. Let's have it out. I'm done with Rob Manfred.
Just for until next time, just think about why Major League Baseball would want more hits. Just think about that question right there.
All right. I'm going to ponder that until next time. That's going to be excellent. But Rafael Devers, of course, then he turns around a little bit later and throws out Jeremy Pena on like an unbelievable throw. I'm like, you fell to the ground on a 90-mile-an-hour exit velocity, and then
the routine play you box, but you make that play.
Well, let's hope they just keep doing it. Come on, Red Sox.
Yeah.
More errors. We'll love it. Thanks to everybody for joining us again today. We'll be back with a fresh pod brought to you by BetOnline. Huge thanks to everybody who's watching and listening all over the place. Sweden recently. I don't know anything Swedish. It's part of our heritage.
I'm like half Swedish, so.
No. So we're very thankful for all of you guys. Have a great week. And as always, go Astros.